Sikha we will learn as you look with the Sikhas Chelik Chavtes, the Sikha with the title Chai Elul. Now we know what Chai Elul is. It was seen in the Sikha, and the Rebbe explains things that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in the name of Alt Chassidim about Chai Elul. And it's interesting to note that from this Sikha we see how the Rebbe is medayik in expression words of the Frierdiker Rebbe's. Mamish like we're medayik when we learn like this Gemara, Rasha, Tosfos, the Rishonim. And by the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe's words, every word is meduik, every word is exact, and the Rebbe explains it. And we'll see that in the Sikha. So the Rebbe starts like this: when them talk from Chai Elul, concerning the day of Chai Elul, which means simple pshat, Chai is Yud Ches, the 18th day of Elul, which is the Yom Haledet from the Baal Shem Tov, which is the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov. He was born Chai Elul, Shnaz, the year Nun Ches Sof, which is the year Tov Nun Ches, which Tov Nun Ches is the same letters as Nachas. So we always refer to the Baal Shem Tov as born the year Nachas, which in the secular date, that's in the year 1698, Chai Elul 1698. And it's also Yom Haledet from Alter Rebbe, also the birthday of the Alter Rebbe, Chai Elul Shnaz Kahos. The Alter Rebbe was born in the year Tov Kuf Hey, which the letters, if you juggle them around, makes the word Kahos, which is in 1745. So concerning this special day, so the Rebbe says, my father-in-law said in a Sikha, and he quotes word for word of the Sikha that the Frierdiker Rebbe said concerning Chai Elul. Now, as we understand, Chai is 18, but Chai also has a meaning. The word Chai means life. And concerning the word life, the life of Elul, the Frierdiker Rebbe says as follows. Bachsidim is voran an alte chassidische word in zwei Ursprachen. Bachsidim, there's an old chassidische expression, chassidische saying in two expressions. Aleph, that quotes number one, the first one is, Chai Elul is der Tag, was hat gebracht und bringt a Leben in Elul. If you remember, we have to follow every single word. That Chai Elul is the first expression, is Chai Elul is the day that brought and brings life into Elul. Remember the exact words. The second thing, base, Chai Elul gita chayes and ravede von anila deide v'deideli. That Chai Elul gives life into the service, the Avedas Hashem, of anila deide v'deideli, which is Elul. We know it says in Sfarim, the Rebbe brings here from Avudram, different Sfarim, that the Posek in Shir Hashirim, Ani l'deide v'deideli, I am to my beloved, I meaning Yidden, are to the Deibishter, and Deibishter is to us, my beloved is to me. That's Rosh Tevis Elul. So Chai Elul gives Chayes, life, into the Aveda of Anila Deide V'Deideli, which Bepashta is this, the Aveda of Elul is Anila Deide V'Deideli, that I am to my beloved, the beloved is to me, I'm to the Deibishter is to me. Now, at this point, it would seem that it's the same thing, both expressions, they're just different ways of expressing the same idea. So the Rebbe says, no, from them was Pedlushas Meire V'Chomi Admurat Iber gesagt, beide Neschois, from the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe said both expressions, his movement, we understand this, is eine beide Wiesgehalten. It means that they're both true, both have meaning. Und as in jedem Nusach ist da ein Aufstellung mit dem Zweiten. And in each expression, there is something that the other one doesn't have. There's some chidush, something special in each one over the other one. Va'ed, go further, even more than that. Therefore, was Meir V'Chomi Admur, as gesagt mit dem say that after, and the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe said it with this order, in other words, the first one and then the second one, but in this order, or bifrater they misamen given mit Aleph and especially, if you look in the Sikhe, it says in the first one, it says the word Aleph, it means he writes this is number one. And the second one, he writes a base, this is number two, is moving. From that we understand, as frier kommt der in Chai Elul, was is a Tag, was gebracht und bringt a Leben in Elul, that first comes the first expression, which means that whatever we're going to explain in the first one, that what? That this is the day that brought and brings a life in Elul, und noch kommt der base, der zweite Nusach, and then comes the second Dinyan, which is the second Nusach of Chai Elul, was gita chayes in the Aveda von Anila Deide V'Deide Li, that it gives a life in the Aveda of Anila Deide V'Deide Li. So in order to understand the difference, we have to see, go word by word and see what different words are in each one, and then when we analyze those words, the Rebbe says we'll see that there is a difference in what these words mean. The differences between these two expressions are as follows. Number one, In Nesh Nusach is the Loshen Chai Elul, is their tog was. The first one that says Chai Elul is the day. So he's speaking about the day was that brought and brings life in Elul. But he uses the word der Tog. Mashenkin in the zweiten Nusach steht Chai Elul Stam, under Adgosha, der Tog. In the second Nusach it says Chai Elul gives life in the Veda Vanili Day. So the first one says it's the day that brought and brings life in Elul. And the second one doesn't say the day. It just says Chai Elul without stressing the dog. Second thing, in Nersh Nusach, hat gebracht und bringt a Leben. In the first one, it says brought and brings a life. Mashenken in zweiten Nusach, in the second one, it says Gita Chayes, gives a life. Was in them, this difference is in them Faran zwei Shinoim. In this itself, there are two differences. Number one, in Nersh Nusach, bringt, in zweiten, the first Nusach says that it brings life, and the second one says gives life. Superficially, it's the same thing, but we'll see it's not. Another thing, in Nesh Nusach is a Beloshen Over and Beloshen Heve. In the first one, it's past tense and present tense. He says, Hod gebracht und bringt. It says, brought and brings. And the zweite Nusach is Nor Beloshen Heve, Git. And the second one is only present tense, gives. Third thing, that was we had two differences. In the second detail, there were two itself. Now there's a third one. In Nesh Nusach, in the first one, he says 11 in Elul, it says gives life in Elul, but in Zweit Nusach, it gives Achayis in the Ravede from Adil Deidili. First one says it gives a life in Elul, and the second one it says it gives in the Avede of Anil Deidili, which again seemingly is the same thing, but it's not. Rabbi says you could say that these changes, these differences, are not just different small differences in just how you express it, but it's major changes in the contents of what this is supposed to say. Number one, their bitu Chai Elul is their togvos. When we say the expression Chai Elul is the day which, etc., it stresses that the day, there's a time. It's a day. It's one of the days of the year. It's a special day. Der Tag was gebracht bringt Leben in Elul. It's a day that brought and brings life into Elul. So we're talking about the day. The day is a day. It's a special day. And the day brings life into Elul. But when you refer to it, not the day, but you say Chai Elul, is a bainita ze mutkish derinyan as mantis shabbat. That doesn't stress the time. Nor beike dem inhalt from the talk mainly what the day means. And the Rebbe in Order 6 says, even though the word Chai Elul also expresses the 18th day of the month of Elul, so it's a day in the year, but still, it's not the same when you use the word der Tog, this is the day. Here we just use the general term of Chai Elul. And besides that, when we say Chai Elul, we're always when you say the word Chai Elul, we're not just trying to say it's the day of the month Elul. We say, why do we say Chai Elul, not Yud Ches Elul? Because we're trying to stress a concept. Chai Elul is a concept. So it's not so much so the time, nor beike der Inhalt von dem Tag. So when you say Chai Elul, thereby nita ze mutkish der Inyan as manshbeit, it doesn't stress the day on its own, but mainly what the day contains. In andere Werte, and the Rebbe explains it in other words, makes it very simple. In Zman seine Franz when it comes to time, there are two things. Number one, etzem azman, the time. This is a time. This is a day of the year. This is a time. And then you have the second thing, teichen azman. What is the teichen, the contents of that time? Look, Dugma, give an example. Yom HaShabbos, the day of Shabbos, was Izman. In Zman is in time, number one, is Eine from the Shiva Simei HaShavua. It's one of the 7 days of the week. It's a day of the week. The Yom HaShvi, the Kol HaShvi in Chavivim, being the 7th day, and all 7 are beloved, is a Yom HaYuchad. It's a special day. It's a day and a special day. Then, in that same day of Shabbos, we find the second thing. The Yom HaShvi, Farmokt in Zich Kedusha HaShabbos. The 7th day, this day contains the holiness of Shabbos. But the Kedusha Matzadatzim is a Mailam Megeder Amokim Bazman. The Kedusha is something beyond time and beyond space. And he brings it from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Nor the Kedusha is Meir in the Zman Yom HaShvi. That Kedusha shines in the 7th day. So you have the 7th day as a day of the week, whichever, it's a day on its own. And then you have the contents of what is in it. You have the Kedusha of Shabbos. There are two nyonim. Same thing in every union of Zman. When we have a special date, you have these two things. That's the first difference between these two Nischoyes. Like Nashn Nusach kommt der Leben von dem Zman. The first one, we're saying, Chai Elul is their tog that brought and brings their life in Elul. So we're talking about what brings the day. So he uses the word the day. That means the day itself from Chai Elul. He says, it's a day, a special day. It's not talking about what's the teichen of the day. This day is a special day. So that brings life into Elul. According to the second expression, the second one speaks about Chai Elul. So when we say Chai Elul gives the life, so we're talking about what's inside Chai Elul. It's what's the teichen, the contents of what is in Chai Elul. So that's one difference we see. The second thing is that Chilik Anal is noch mehr Beilit am dritten Shini Anal. This difference that we said, whether we're talking about the day itself giving the special life, or we're talking about what Chai Elul stands for is giving the special life, we see even more clearly in the third difference we said, zwischen die zwei Nischois, between the two. In Nesh Nusach is the Loshna Leben in Elul. The first one says it gives life into Elul. Und in zweiten Nusach, the second one says it gives a chayis in the Aveda von Anila Deide B'Deide Li. It gives a life in the Aveda Hashem of Anila Deide B'Deide Li. Which means, in ersten Nusach redt sich wegen dem Leben, was wird eingebracht in dem Zman von Chede Shel. The first one says that Chai Elul is, there's a Zman of Elul. There's a Zman of the month of Elul. And what we say, this gives life to the Zman. We said before there are two things. There is the Zman itself, and then there is what's in the Zman. So the Zman of Elul is a Zman. And we're saying that Chai Elul, as the Loshen goes, the tog was gebracht. The day brings, it's a day that brings something into the Elul. So it's talking about the Zman itself. The second one talks about what's inside. The Aveda of Elul. The Chayes von Teichen von Chai Elul, but git Chayes in dem Teichen von Chai Elul. It's talking about there's a special chayas, and the chayas that's within Chai Elul contains, besides it's a day, which is a special day. In there is some kind of ruch aveda, and that gives a chayas in the aveda of the time of Elul. In the aveda from Anila Deide V'Deide Li, this is Rosh Tevis Elul. Anila Deide V'Deide Li is, we said, the abbreviation of Elul. But der Wort Elul, we don't mention the word Elul. We just mention that it's the chayas comes and gives chayas in the Aveda of Anila Deide V'Deide Li. We mean Elul, but he's not mentioning Elul as a zman, as a time. He's mentioning as a certain Aveda that's there to be done in this time. And another thing, now the other difference we said, the second one, between brengt or the git, that the first one we said, that Chai Elul brought and brings, we're talking about bringing life into Elul, and the second one is gita chayis in Elul. It gives a chayis. So again, we sounds the same, but it's not. It's achille kikri. There's a big difference. Brengt a leben, when you say something brings life, means as the leben gufa gefinzig b'mokamacha. Bringing means when someone brings something. There is something someplace, and I go and take that thing and bring it. So when you say it brings life, it means there is such a concept of something life that's there beyond, before. When they talk for Chai Elul is their mamutza was bring them leben and mokamacher and Elul. And Chai Elul brings that life. That's the taisha brings life. Mashenken gita chayes meant when you say gives chayes, as Chai Elul git chayes medelei. Chai Elul gives its own life. When you say you give something that you own, and you give it. If you say you bring something, it's not something from you. It's something that you're taking from someplace else. So the first expression when it talks about bringing, it's talking about something else. Bringing something from the outside. Giving is something that comes from. So it gives chayes in the Aveda of Anila Deide. Now, the Rebbe explained here, he analyzed the different inyonim that's there in the different expressions. But what does that actually mean? So Rabbi says the explanation is as follows. The gates of Chede Shel gefindt mit zwei inyonim. Concerning Chede Shel, we find two things. We know there are two things. There's what's called a Sarusa de Latate, Sarusa de Leile. Sarusa de Latate means that it's a lotion of Zayir. Sarusa means a Yisayir, it's an awakening. Awakening down here. Latate means down here. Awakening within the people down here. Then Yisarusa de Leila means awakening from above. So Yisarusa de Leila means when there is something that is given by Hashem to the people. Isarusa de Latate means there's an awakening within the people to Hashem. So we know that Elul is the Isarusa de Latate. Elul represents the fact that Yidden do something to get closer to Hashem. Elul is the Rosh Hashanah, Kanal Anila Deidi V'Deidili. As we said, Elul is the Rosh Hashanah, I am to my beloved is to me. Frier kumt Anila Deidi V'Deidili, then noch V'Deidili, the Sarusa de Leila. In the post, that first comes Anila Deidi me. That's what Yidden do, we Yidden do. That's Sarusa de Latat. And then comes Deidili, there's a Sarusa de Leila from the Eibishten to us. Das heißt, the Sarusa de Leila, the Deidili, is Ateitzof, and that this second part that the Eibishten gives to us is a result of the first. It starts off with Sarusa de Latate, and then comes the Sarusa de Leila. Nit v'chedesh Nisan, was in Yoni is a Sarusa de Leila. Not like Nisan, which it starts the other way. Nisan is when it starts from the Isaiah from above. Loshna Kosev, like another posik in Shir Hashirim says, Deidili v'anilei. My beloved is to me, and I am to him. Freer Deidili. First, my beloved is to me, which is the Eibishter is to me. There's something I get from the Eibishter. Und noch, durch der Sarusa de Leila v'anilei. After that, after you have the Isaiah from above, comes v'anilei, the Eibishter, that I am to him means that awakening from above causes an awakening within me. So, Elul starts off with the Sarusa de Latate, not like the Chedesh Nisan. Nochmer. By the way, in other places it says in Chassidus and the Siches that Nisan is Chedesh Oviv. Oviv is Aleph base, goes from Eiler up. Elul is connected to Tishrei. It's not negated to this year because here it's not exactly the same, but Tishrei is Tovshin, it goes backwards. But anyway, that's just by the way. But Elul is the Sarusa de Latate. Nochmer, you go further. The Alter Rebbe Zok Nukut Teira, as they didn't leave from Elul, Alter Rebbe Nukut Teira explains that when we say Anila Deidi V'Deidi, which goes on Elul, and the first half is the Sarusa de Latate, Anile de Mit, I am to my beloved. The second one is from Davish to us. Really, when does the second part have? The Amshochas of the Kusi is Baruch Lamate B'Chinas Galus. When does the godliness become revealed down from Hashem? It's not in the month of Elul. Nor the Noch Berosh Shana. That happens at Rosh Shana. Valderinya for Chedesh Elul is the Sarusa de Latate. Elul, the whole Elul is a Sarusa de Latate. It brings about the Sarusa de Leila. When does that happen? The Alter Rebbe says that happens in the month of Tishrei. So on one hand, it comes out that Elul is the Aveda Milmata Lamaylo, which is from down up, Sarusa de Latate, and that brings about the Sarusa de Leila. Le'idecha, on the other hand, it's not so. Zog der Alter Rebbe, dort Gufi, in that same mimer we just quoted, the Alter Rebbe says, as Elul is as man von Eisrotzen. Elul is a time when it's a special auspicious time. Zman is Galus Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. It's the time when there is a revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy. And this is brought down, this is from Kabbalah, from the Arizal, that Elul, the whole month of Elul, there is a revelation of the Yud Gimel Misrachim. We know the Yud Gimel Misrachim represent a very, very special high spiritual level, and in the month of Elul, it's revealed. What's there Gilim Umayla, this Gilu, this revelation that comes from above, that takes place, it's not that person works and reaches the level of Yud Gimel Misrachim, nor B'derech Sarusa de Leila, it comes from Hashem. So here we have in Elul something that comes in Sarusa de Leila. Die Verstanding von der Moschel, was der Alter Rebbe sagt dort, if them, like, we understand it from the Moschel, the parable that the Alter Rebbe says there. He gives a Moschel of this idea that there is this galus of Yud Gimel Misrachim, revelation of the Heimadrege from the Eibishter. In the month of Elul gives a Moschel of a king. Plus, if Yamelech was become upon a king, that sometimes the king comes into the field, not in his palace. So then anybody who wants to greet him is allowed to come and see him. He sees everybody with a smiley face. He smiles to everybody. So what comes out here? And this is an Elul. And Elul, the Eibishter comes to us. So that means Elul is a Sarusa de Leila. Before we said Elul is Sarusa de Latate. So the Rebbe explains it. Even though Elul generally is a Sarusa de Latate, comes from below, and we elevate ourselves, getting closer to the Eibishter, like we said before. Every time that a person does something and accomplishes, there always has to be before that is Sarusa de Leila. There has to be an awakening from the Shem of the Aveda and the Aveda. Like the Chazal say, and the Posik in Eve, in Medesh Rabbah, Vayikra Rabbah, it brings this Posik and it says that even though Yidden do mitzvahs, but it all starts from him. A Yid has tzitzis. Who gave you the money to get tzitzis, to have wool? You have tefillin, you would do the mitzvahs. Who gave you? Who gave you the money to buy a house in order to have mezuzah? So before you do your part, there's always something that comes from the Eibishter. So in Chassidus it says that any Aveda he does, as much as it's with him, the Eibishter helps him, comes to him, and makes it possible for him to do it. That's what it means, that there are the Ha'ora, the shine, the ray of the 13 Midas Rachman in the month of Elul. Das is the Sarusa de Leile. If the Aveda from Elul, Anila Deide V'Deideli. Elul is the Aveda, Anila Deide V'Deideli, which is starting from below. It's an Aveda of something that we do in Aveda. And what comes before that is a certainly Sarusa de Leile to start. So it has both things. So Elul, the emes is Sarusa de Leile, but you have to have also a push from the Eibishter to do that. Maybe put in other words, I can't say exactly, this is the words from the Moshel of the Melech. The Melech comes. He doesn't push you to come to him. He doesn't do anything. But what he does is he makes it easier for you to come to him. He comes here and he's available. It's not like Nisan, the Eibishter came and pulled the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. So it's the Eibishter pulled them. That's the Jesus of the Leila. Here the Yidden have to come themselves. But the Eibishter, before you're able to come, and makes it easier for you. So there is a Sarus that comes before. So it comes out from here that Elul has both in Yonim. But then the Rebbe says, even though Elul has both things. It has the shine, these galus of the 30 meters of attribute from above, and it has the Sarus Latate, what the Yidden do there, now. Doch, seine die Rosh Tevis vom Wort Elul, Anila Deide V'Deide Leib, Maram es Dafke von the Inyan, nevertheless, which words in the Rosh Tevis of Elul, which Anila Deide V'Deide Leib, which is the first, starts with Sarusa de Latate. So we see the main thing is the Sarusa de Latate, but we know there is also something beforehand that the Eibishter does in order to give you the opportunity or the ability, whatever, to do the Sarusa de Latate. So we have both. What's the pshat? The Yeshlemer the beer, which the pshat is like this: the Sarusa de Leila von Elul, Ha'oros Yudgim Misrachimim, is verbunden mit der Zman von Elul. This that in the month of Elul, there's a big relation of Yudgim Misrachimim. That's connected to the Zman of Elul. We said before, there is in Elul, like in every Zman, every time, there are two things. There's the day on its own, and then there is what's in the day. So this that there is a Gilim Umaylo during Elul, that's connected to the part of Zman of Elul, the time of Elul. Which means like this: there are certain times of the year when it's special, auspicious time. Before anything, nothing that we do, the time itself is auspicious. It's not connected to the work, the Aveda of a person, or the Eibishter hat man eingestellt in Teva from Welt. The Eibishter, to begin with, put into the nature of the world as these manim, and these are times that on their own, they're a special time. They're a special time. That there is a Bechede Shell, so too in Elul. The reason there is this revelation of the 13 attributes of Rachman in Elul is because the month of Elul is a special, auspicious time from above. Was then will gate the Melech Harusin, so then the king comes out into the field. So the Zman of Elul is a special Zman, and that comes Milmaila, that's from the Eibishter. But what the contents of what's within this month of Elul, was the reingegeben worden in dem Zman that was given into the time, is Adarabe. That's not Isarusa de Leila. Adar, on the contrary, Dafke derinya von Isarusa de Tata Vedes Sodom. What's expected to be done, what's in the month is the Vedes Atshuva, the Vedes Sodom. A person should turn to the Eibishter. So that's not the Zman. The Zman itself comes from Maila. But then the Zman makes it so that you are able to, what the Zman expects of you, that you should now start working. So you have the Sarusa de Leila in the Zman, and then you have the Teichen of the Zman of Elul, the Sarusa de Latativ. Now we'll understand the difference in the two expressions concerning what Chayel does. Just like we have the two things in Elul, both things, that there comes a revelation of Hashem, and then you have the Sarusa de Latate, that's the Aveda Vayid in Elul. Chayel also has the two things. Chay goes Chayes, life. Elul gives life. So what is the pshat? Ader Chayes was Chay Elul. bringt rein in El, this light that we said, Chayel, which represents Chassidus and the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, that what they accomplished brings life in Elul, is in Beide Protim Shabei. It gives life in both parts. It gives a chayas in El, meaning in the time of El. El is the special time of Gilim Umaylav. Chayel brings a chayas into that time. And also gives a chayas in the Aveda of El, which is the Aveda of Sarus Tate. And this is how he explains it. The talk from Chayel, the day itself of Chayel, which is the Yom Haledes and Baal Shem Tov from the Alter Rebbe, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, is a Yom Zgul and Nazmaf and Yisrotz. That's a special time, a specious time. It's a special time, a specious time. The time, the day itself is special. Und der Pfarrer hat es gebracht, an neuen Leben der Meisrotze von El. That's why it brought a special life, a new life, into the specialty of the time of Elul. In the Reseiris of El, was kommt to Maila. The time of El brings the Seiris that comes from above, because it shines the Yigum Rachmim. So what Chaya El does, which means what the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, did, they brought out that the Seiris of the Zman of Elul, the specialty of the day of Elul, is something special. And the Nochi for was Chaya El, then you have what Chaya El did from what is the contents of Elul. Verbund mit Aveda Sodem Apateres Chassidus, connected to the Aveda of a person. So if you have Chayel, which means the Derech of Chassidus, so Chayel, the Derech of Chassidus, brought in Gita Chayis and Amteichem V'Chedesh El, that gives a life not only in the special day as the day. There's what's in the day. What's in the day? The Aveda of a Yid. It gives a Chayis. Chassidus gives a Chayis in the Teichen of Chedesh El, in the Aveda from Anila Deida V'Deida Li. In the Aveda, which is Anila Deida V'Deida Li, the Aveda for Chedesh El is Got another Chayis. The Aveda Bel is another Chayis. And these are the two things, and we'll see how it fits exactly to the words. And the Chiluk is Mutgesh in the Shina Halishenis in the Tzveinas Chois Hanal. That difference between the two things is stressed. We see it in the different expressions, in the two ways the saying was said. And also, if we look at it, we'll understand why the order. The first one came first, and that's later, because according to this explanation, there's the say that there is how Derech Naveda first comes one thing and then comes the other, and he explains it. The Reshta Nusach Aleph, the first one, and he stresses the Aleph, which means this is not just the first one that's written. The first one in Inyan. It's talking about the first thing. The first specialty of El, the Aores you give Rachmim was Kumter Tzemeiros and Gisarus. It's talking about the Zman of El, and we said the Zman of El is a special time, and then there's a special revelation of Yudin Rachmim, and that comes to awaken in the person his Gisarus to work. Just like the Yudin Rachmim themselves, when they come, it's a Gisarus Leila. Al derech zeh, the Leben for Chayel, was is the mit verbunden, kommt mit Gisarus Leila. So the same thing, Chayel, which gave life into that, is also, it gave life into the day itself. It's connected to the Isarusa de Leila, which comes from the day itself. So there is something that Chayel gave, made stronger, better, more of life in the Sinyan, that Elul is a special time. And there's a Yud Gimel Rachmim, so that makes it. When the far stayed thereby, that's when the first Lashon, it says that, the Lashon, it says, their Tag was the Gebracht und bringt a Leben in Elul. It's the day that brought and brings life to Elul. What does that say here? First of all, says Mutkish Desman. We're stressing this is something to do with the day. We say Chai Elul is their Tag. A day. It gave a life, a Leben in Elul. Elul is a time. So we're talking about the time. So Chai Elul, which is the union that represents Chassidus, gave life into the day of, that day gave life into this. It's a special in the day of Elul, and it's connected to the day of Chai Elul, and connected to the month of Elul, which is a time. Then he also says the Lashon bringt. We said before, when you say bringt, the brings means weiß. Canal we said before, der Leben kommt im Makmacher. It brings life. Bring means it's someplace else. Von der Isarusa de Leila. When you say it brings something else, it means it comes from above, from higher. Der Leben kommt nicht von Tag Atzmei. This life that Chayel brought is not in the day itself, nor Milmaila. We're talking about this is something that's Milmaila. Chayel is not their talk about bring the Leben. Chayel brings the life. Since we're talking about the day itself, and the day itself is connected to Sarusa de Leila, so the Chayela, what it brings, is also from someplace. It's from above. That's why it says the Loshen bringt. And then another point, Mizmat gesheich dem over, hat gebracht. In the first one, it says brought, which is past tense, and brings, present tense. Why? Weil der Inyan, from the Sarusa de Leila, because this concept we're speaking about that Chayel has to do with the Sarusa de Leila, the Gilui from above, is Lagaba Aveda Sod Manyin from Nova. Lagaba, the person, it's something of the past. What's that past? Was kommt lifnei and also since we're talking about the Sarusa de Leila comes before you do your Aveda. So that's something from before. So that's why it says gebracht, brought already, because that's there before it comes to you. In the second one, which is not just the second in the way it's written, but it's numbered 2 because it's the second level. It's talking about Chayel, which is Chassidus, which gives the life that it gives in what is inside the month of Elul, which is the Aveda of Elul. That's why he uses the Lashon in that Aveda for Nanila Deida. He doesn't mention the word Elul because he's not talking about the Zman. He's talking about the Aveda that Elul is. And the Aveda of Elul is Nanila Deida. Because their Chayas kommt nicht von Zman, their Tog. That Chayas doesn't come connected to the day of Chayel, nor from Teichen Ayem. Verbunden mit Gilach Chassidus. It's negay what the day is. It's negay to the Gilach Chassidus. And the day has an Aveda, and Gilei Achsidus made that Aveda should be with more Chayas. And the far state the Loshen Gita Chayas. That's why it says Git. While the Teichen from Chayel, Gita Chayas midilei, and the Aveda from Elul. Because this is something that is part of the Sarusa Latate, part of the Aveda. There's an Aveda in Elul, there's an Aveda of Chayel, which Aveda is Achsidus. That's not something that comes from outside. Outside is when it's Sarusa de Leila. So the first thing which has to do with the day, that's Sarusa de Leila. So there it says brings. And here it's talking about the day itself with Aveda, which is Sarusa de Latate. So it's there. So that's why he says the Loshen, it gives the Chayes. The Chayel, the Teichen of Chayel, which is the Aveda of Chassidus, gives Chayes into the Aveda of Anila Deid V'Deideli. But that's the Gabba the days. The day, als day, in the month of Elul. Legabe the person, the Chayes was Chayel Git in the Aveda from Anila Deide V'Deide, the Chayes that it gives, in the second way he's saying, in the Aveda of Anila Deide V'Deide, but Nimshech nit b'derech Sarusa de Leila. By a person that doesn't come in a form, the Chayel gives it the Sarusa de Leila. No, b'derech Umata L'Mayla. It comes Milmata L'Mayla. It comes from below to above. The Rodam Dafas Haruis bring him in Akeach Alapel, there's an Aveda. A person has to bring it out. So Chayel, the first one, Chayel happens by itself. Chayel is special. The day becomes as special as any day of Elul is. The Chayel is, the day itself is special. There's a bigger Gilim L'Mayla. The second thing means that Chayel gives a Chayas in the Aveda of the person. So that's something the person has, Aveda means work. You have to work on it to bring it up in the Keich Alapel. So then that's like about the person. The person has to work to bring it. So he has to, like say, give it. He has to give his Aveda. And the order of 23, the Rebbe explained that another difference, you could say, that in the first way he uses the word git leben, which is the Yiddish word for life. And the second one, he says it in Loshen Kodesh. He says the word chayes. Why? Based on what we're saying. The first one is for people that are just starting. We're talking about the Gila that comes Milmaila before they're doing their Aveda. There is a Gila Milmaila on the day itself, which will help you do your Aveda. But we're talking about the Gila Milmaila. Or he says, like it says in L'Gutayna, Melech Pasode, that means the moshel of the Melech is in the field. That means the Melech is not in his palace. In his field means the people are still in a level of field, not a higher level. Or an Elul Yemei the Alter Rebbe says, they're weekdays. That's why they're not a yontif, because it's a time when the people are not at the level yet of being so great. It's talking in Yiddish. For lower people, it's not a Loshen Kodesh, take a word. But the second one is talking people already are doing the Aveda. So they're doing the Aveda Vela. Elamai Chayela makes their Aveda better. That's why it says Chayes Loshen Kodesh. That's why it says Loshen Kodesh. Now back to Ha'orachetz. The Ha'orah Defun, the Hero Defun in Avodas Hashem is in Beit Service. The lesson from what we said now in the person serving Hashem is in both extremes. Those that are holding the beginning by the Aleph of Elul, like we said, but the Aleph is when it's only things Mamayla, the person didn't do much yet. Sagt man, as Chai Elul is der Tag, was hat gebracht und bringt Leben in Elul. So we tell him, you should know, Chai Elul is a day that brought and brings life into Elul, meaning to say, what are they telling the person? Telling him like this. Ayit can time the person could say, wie shaykh as wissen nicht, was die Matzov ist, kennen makabel v'kel sein Chayes von Chai Elul. Person could think to himself, I know my level, my spiritual level. How can I receive and contain and absorb the Chayes of Chai Elul? What connection do I have to such a special day? Chai Elul is very special, so, but I'm far from it. What does it have to do with me? So we tell them, we tell them, even though you're just starting your Aveda, und du hast nicht angegeben, you didn't start at all. Like it says there, it didn't say, it says Aveda, you didn't start any Aveda, no. You're not holding by the level of Anila Deid of Deidili because you didn't do anything yet in Aveda. And that's connected to the first one, but the first one doesn't say Anila Deid. The first one, he just Elul, it means you're just holding it, but not by such Aveda. How can we tell you? How is it possible? You should make a chayas, add extra life into your Aveda. As we said, Gita chayas. Gita chayas gives chayas means it gives. You have it. So you could tell, no, I don't have it. So we tell them, no, you have it potentially. Since the first one speaks about a level when you're not doing Aveda. Nevertheless, we tell you the day itself brings a specialty into the person. So even though you're low, you still have a connection to Chayel. Because the Chayel gives a special chayas that because of the special day, it'll bring you life in your thing of Elul. Nochmer, even more, Chayel. He's going to explain why it says also, like we said before, Lashon Nover passed. We're telling the person, you're thinking you have no shaykhs. We're telling, no, you have a shaykhs. Plus, you already have a shaykhs from before. That's why he says, gave before. This ability you have as an inheritance from your fathers and forefathers. And the far bringt is, and that's why you have this special life in the present. That's why the Lashon is, hat gebracht und bringt. It brought it because you have it from before, and it's going to help you now. Leib, that's the lesson that the person who's in the lower level, the first level, has from that we tell them you should know that you have it. On the other hand, there's a lesson here also for the higher level of people. As it's nicht genug for him, bringt Leben in Elul. It's not for him that Chayel brings life into Elul. That's the first one. There is smooth ufton achayes, gita achayes in Aveda von Elul. You have to know. You must go further. You must do more your sarusa de latata. You must do more your Aveda. You have the chayes in your Aveda. That's the second one. Ledugman, he gives an example, a practical example. Let's use an example of learning Torah. That's an Aveda Vayid. Say, need genug der inne von Ligmanish. We tell the person, it's not enough that you should just learn superficially. Ligrish Mike's Rabbi. You should learn what you heard from your teacher, from your Rebbe, which is the dogma to bring the Leben. That's like the first one that brings a life. The Leben is free and designer. When you say it brings a life, it means it comes from someplace else. So that fits to this person who what he's learning is because he heard it from his Rebbe. So he's just taking from somebody else. You have to understand it. You have to go deeper into it. Besides that, you're reviewing what your Rebbe taught you. Time. You work on your own with your own seichel to explain the reasons. You should even bring up new thoughts in Torah. And he quotes from the Zohar in order 27, Hilchas Talmud Torah from the Alter Rebbe, and the Geras and Lashon from Zohar, that has to be a person who's mechuyev to mechadish in Torah. But Dugmas was Chayel, that's the second way. Chayel gita chayes in the Raveda from Nanila Deideli. So it's not enough that you take something from the outside. But what you have to do is, that's the give a chayes. Give a chayes comes from within you. In other words, you have to work for it. That's the Serus Latad. The Rebbe says, wie bald das Kiddush as Meruch Hamed Mura gesagt bei Rabbi beiden des Choyes. Und die heißen abdrucken say, since the Friedrich Rebbe said in public both expressions, and he said to print it and publicize it, he moved my be'emes and beiden des Choyes shaykhet to kollechet in Israel. So really both are shaykhs to every Yid. Because still, just now he explained that the first one is shaykhs to a lower level. Don't think you don't have it. Yes, it's given to you. The second one is shaykhs to a higher level. Tell them it's not enough that you're doing it yourself. You got to do yourself even more. But Now we're saying both are shaykhs to everybody. From Afil, there was haltesh betchinas aveda, because even the one that's holding the beginning, the first level, muzer wissen, he has to know, must know. Asof sof kenet zukum under zu, as es geben nuftan achayis bavedes shemedele. He's supposed to know that yes, eventually he could reach the level where he does aveda, and he could have the chayis in his aveda, even though he's at the first level, which he doesn't have aveda yet. You should know already that you should keep in mind there's a second level, and that's what you're going to get. Well, either he's on the other hand, the feeling was halten in the dark as they tune in the Rabbi from Anil Deidi. The other people who are holding already the level of Anil Deidi, they're working on that. Not only that, they're able to have more life, chayas in their Aveda. They have to know, as das Alts is neat in ganzen Seeruftu. As much as we're saying the second one is you have to keep in mind there's a first level, which means, after all, it's not only yours, it's given to you from Hashem. There is Heipsichon from them Leben, was Chayel bringt Mamaili no. It starts off, there's the first level, till you, before you, that Chayel brings life. It means there's something that comes from the outside of you, as much as it's you, but there is some help that you get from the month of Elul and from the Inyan of Chayel. For instance, for example, in the example that we said before about learning Torah, with the Gemara Tzelt, we find something like that, that as much as it's yours, really you should know it's not yours. We find in the Gemara that tells us concerning Rabbi Akiva. Moshe Rabbeinu had gehört for Rabbi Akiva learned with seine Talmidim. The Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu heard what Rabbi Akiva is teaching his Talmidim, and it says, he didn't know what he didn't understand it. He became, it says weak, which means he felt very bad. He's Omrei Talmidov till he heard a Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva say to him, Rebbe Menayaloch, where did you get what you said? Reb Omer Lem, so he said, Aloch al Moshe Messinai. All comes from Moshe Messinai. Oh, he's Demel this Yashvadite, he felt better. So here we see that what Rabbi Akiva said is his own, but it all his own is based or comes from what Moshe Rabbeinu said. That means that even those things that Rabbi Akiva said a chidush, something new. But the father is Moshe lo yedei my name. That's what Moshe didn't understand, because it would be something new, and Moshe would have known it. That means it's something new. Is Mekeiram from Moshe Rabbeinu. The source from Moshe Rabbeinu, Shaloch al Moshe Messinai, which means comes from Hashem. So we have to remember that the people from the first level have to keep in mind there's a second level, and the people from the second level have to have in mind that there's a first level, and everything they have comes Momaila like the first level expresses. And I'll repeat again what I said in the beginning, that in this Sikha we see that the Rebbe takes a few lines of the Frierdiker Rebbe's expressions, and he learns pshat in every single expression, why this is this word, why that word, mamish, like we learn in Gemara. Because if something that the Rebbe said, that is Torah, that is something holy, and everything is an exact. And the Rebbe is, many sikhs as it, but this sikha is very clear how the Rebbe learns every single word of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Certain other Rabbeim, but you would think somebody from our time, the Frierdiker Rebbe, no. The Rebbe, every word is exact and has deeper meaning. Kabbalah, Aveda, whatever it is.